Good night, everyone. Welcome back to your favorite live sports show. It is indeed hashtag this just in, whether you're watching it live as we are right now or watching it tape delay. You already know what time it is. A big topic, so a big topic deserves some big guests. First, my brother from another mother, Dwayne Marcus. How are you, my guy?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to be here.
You have a new haircut, so that means that he's ready to tackle you, surely. He complained once that he was unprepared without a haircut, so that means that he's ready for my other guest, Payton Doyle P. What is going on?
Not much. Ready to get in all this crazy NBA stuff that's going on.
Well, yeah, and it doesn't get any crazier than what happened in Brooklyn. You got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving as a package deal. At some point, you traded for James Harden and all the mess. You got less than 40 games or 40% of games out of Kyrie Irving. One playoff series. No James Harden. No both men, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, are set to leave the franchise. Dwayne Marcus, since you have that brand new sharp haircut with your 6'3" frame, tell us, how did it all go wrong? How did it go from getting arguably the greatest big three of all time to only winning one playoff series in these 3 years?
I mean, life happened. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be this energetic, buying into the hype guy that you and Neil love so much. This is very simple. Life happened. Kyrie Irving decided that there are things outside of basketball that he prioritized. James Harden found himself a fat suit and got his way to Philadelphia. And Kevin Durant got hurt a lot. Like that's really it. That there's not much else. I don't know. I don't really understand why people are trying to make it bigger than what it is. Like, that's really the facts, right? Kevin Durant missed a year and a half because of injury. James Harden got so in and out of shape so much that he was just decided he didn't want to be there anymore. And Kyrie Irving, as Payton would say, is weird. So that's pretty much how it went wrong. I don't know. That's all I got, honestly.
P, there must be more to it, or is it Dwayne just like life happened? Like, how did it go so wrong in Brooklyn?
I mean, I feel like if you're genuinely surprised that this went bad, like, you weren't really paying attention from the start. I feel like this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I had high hopes for the team just because of the upside. This was either going to play out exactly like it's playing out right now, a complete disaster, a complete and utter failure, or it was going to be one of the biggest successes in the NBA. And there was no in between there. There was no like, oh, this is going to be like fine. Because the moment you had Durant and Kyrie talking about, oh, we don't need coaching, we don't even really need a GM, we could do this all ourselves, that's when you started to realize, okay, this is all screwed. And I guess, like I say, Kyrie's freaking weird. And Kevin Durant is a little bit flaky. These guys they're tremendous basketball players, but one, Brooklyn's lack of the ability to put role players around them because of the trades that they made to get James Harden and whatnot made this team a disaster, because you can't win in the NBA with just two superstars. It's impossible. Every super team that there ever was had good role players, and that's not I say that extremely confidently. Anytime you have a championship team, there's role players, and this Brooklyn Nets team had zero because they traded them all away to get James Harden, and James Harden bailed. So this was all doomed from the start. And yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised.
Wow. I kind of am. But to your point, both you and Dwayne, probably I shouldn't have. No, it's easy to put all this blame on Kyrie Irving. Like, let's go there, let's start there. That's the easy way, to put this: not getting vaccinated, taking unexplained absences even before the pandemic. And then a lot of us like to forget that Kyrie Irving is indeed very injury prone. Like, you can even take out these Brooklyn days and you look at Cleveland, like he is an injury prone player. You can also see, like Dwayne said, life happened. And what if Kyrie didn't get hurt and James Harden in last year's playoffs, one in the first round and the other in the second round against Milwaukee? Like, what if that team doesn't get injured because they're still a Kevin Durant big toe away from advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals? like that happens. I just want to see. I actually put this not on Kyrie, not on Kevin Durant. I think it's an organizational failure. I think it's an actual lack of culture, and I'll explain. Right? Y'all know me. I'm a players guy, and I'm all for player empowerment. I'm all for players dictating their future, and deciding where they go, what they do, and having more power in their hand. And like what me and Neil would have grown up in with the NBA of 80s and 90s. That being said, not every NBA superstar is quite like LeBron, who has the maturity and the awareness to be a franchise onto themselves. Like, I have a saying, Neil knows, you have to save players from themselves. And P is right in a way, like, when you give players like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving all this empowerment, bad things are going to happen. And I think it started from the get-go. Like, I heard rumors, rumblings that the team had grown weary of Kyrie Irving from as early as the first offseason when they toured Asia. Apparently, he stopped speaking to people within a month. And, that started to wear on the franchise as early from then. But then when you look at the decisions that these two guys were allowed to make up, like, you let them con you, for lack of a better word, into paying DeAndre Jordan big money. Let them convince you that they didn't need a coach so they can bring an unseasoned Steve Nash. And, then Kyrie Irving does what he wants, doesn't show up. And it's just like, you see the rumblings, you see it happen in other franchises. Look no further than the Clippers, where they have allowed Kawhi Leonard to do what he felt like. And look where that's backfired. And then you juxtapose that with franchises who have a little more structure in when they bring in superstars. I mean that like Boston and also Miami. When you land in Boston, you have obviously you look up, you see all the titles, and then you have a big figure like Danny Ainge above you. There's a culture around you, there's a setting. Same thing with the Heatles. Yes, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade put together that super team with Chris Bosh. But when you look upstairs, you look at Pat Riley and all his rings and the structure he has involved, there's only so much command and control that these players have. I want to see it as an organizational failure where Brooklyn doesn't have a culture set where you can rein in players. It's clearly couldn't rein in Kyrie. Kevin Durant was allowed in terms of making decisions where Steve Nash and DeAndre Jordan were concerned. I just feel like in a stronger culture setting, like a Boston or a Miami, or even like a San Antonio, look at Golden State. What their culture is like. If you have a strong boss, a strong front office, these things aren't allowed to happen where players are, want to do as they feel like.
An honest question, Justin. 2 years ago, after James Harden forced his way out of Houston into Brooklyn, the Nets were overwhelming title favorites. Yeah. The Nets and the Lakers at that point were the highest betting odds as far as making the finals that year in 2021. If KD, Kyrie, and James Harden win the championship in 2021, are we sitting here bashing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving for the decisions of hiring Steve Nash and their influence on getting DeAndre Jordan the pay? Like, I feel like hindsight's 2020. Obviously, it's cliche that sounds, but I don't like because let's be honest, if they win a championship, even if it's just one in 3 years, right? You win a championship with that roster, we're ready to label the Brooklyn Nets as one of the greatest successes of all time. We're ready to look at that team and say that's at least offensively one of the best offensive juggernauts the game has ever seen, especially from a championship standpoint. I don't think it's fair now, given that it's fallen apart, to condemn Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving for whatever role they played in the hiring of Steve Nash and the contract that DeAndre Jordan signed when he joined. When if they raise a banner in Barclays, we wouldn't be complaining about DeAndre Jordan's money or Steve Nash having
Right,
been
but
hired.
the problem is they didn't. And I get
Sure,
you, right?
but what I'm sure, but what I'm saying is, yeah, they didn't. But just because they didn't doesn't take away from the fact that if they did, we would have turned a blind eye to all of it. Like, I didn't like Steve Nash being hired as a head coach, but I mean, maybe there's a reason I don't. Maybe there's a reason I'm not an NBA front office official, right? Because maybe, just maybe, that is a potentially good thing if they win. What I'm saying is, if you look and you go, and if you go, well, like you look at a trade. I can't. This is just the first thing came to mind. The Timberwolves, which is we all know is probably one of the worst trades ever, right? Let's say somehow on God's green earth, and it's not going to happen, but let's just say somehow the Minnesota Timberwolves make it to and win an NBA Finals the next couple seasons, which we all know is not going to happen. But let's say they do, right? We would take everything we said back about that trade being terrible because it resulted in a championship.
Right, but then
No, that's not going to happen. So that's an extreme case. But what I'm saying is, it's one thing to the Nets win a championship and say, yeah, but DeAndre Jordan, that contract still wasn't worth it. And yeah, hiring Steve Nash still didn't make any sense. But I just feel like it's a little bit of everything you're saying is true. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think it's kind of a lazy argument to make that those are lazy and I think irrelevant details to use to support the claim that this is an organizational failure. But it's not because KD and Kyrie got to do what they want. I mean, LeBron James can do what he wants. Like Kobe got to do what he wants. Shaq got to, like, every great superstar and every great champion gets to do to a degree what they want. Now, and that even extends to Steph, Clay, and Draymond Green, who have dominated the championship picture for the last almost decade now. Like, they get to do what they want. Do we hear about it? No, because they have 4 championships in 8 years, right? LeBron James has won a championship everywhere he's been. LeBron James has got to do whatever he's want. Even long-time vets of basketball teams that might not be champions, right, get to do what they want. It comes with being the upper echelon of whether it's the league or whether it's just earning that respect. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving at this point in their career have earned the ability to do more or less what they want. Do I agree with Kyrie Irving deciding to go take a 3-week vacation to go celebrate with his sister for her birthday? No. But as I said on my show this past Friday that posted on Sunday with Payton, Kyrie's a grown man. I'm not going to judge Kyrie Irving for his decisions. But what I am going to say is I just feel like condemning Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving for their involvement in DeAndre Jordan's contract and the hiring of Steve Nash is just lazy. Because whether it's Harden and Kyrie not being hurt 2 years ago, or whether it's Kevin Durant's toe not being just an inch too big, if they win a championship, we'd sweep all of that under the rug, right? This whole Brooklyn Nets thing, and I've said this a couple of times before, this whole Brooklyn Nets thing is like it's like a it's like a relationship, right? You know, there are things in a relationship that you don't appreciate your partner doing, but there are things that they do that make you ignore those things. When that stops, then you look and you say, man, well, why doesn't she cook? Or why doesn't she wash the dishes? Or why doesn't she clean the house? You know what I mean? Like, there are things that we use to mask bad decisions. And if the Nets don't fall off the cliff the way that they did, you're not talking about Steve Nash being hired or DeAndre Jordan getting money. So why are we talking about it now? If we wouldn't be talking about it if this was successful.
That's the thing, right? So if you know me, I did talk about it then because I had a problem with both. And
no, I know you
right,
did. I'm speaking generically.
And so here's the thing, right? And I understand your point, but I'm going to bring it in 2 directions. One, we live in a results-oriented world. And when you make these bad decisions, and they're not bad decisions in hindsight, like you can see that they were bad decisions, they don't look as bad as you say if you win. But when you only have 1 playoff series victory in 3 years, then these decisions look even worse than they really were, or as bad as they do. So that's one.
But does it? Because this team has only really had 2 years, if we're being honest. KD and Kyrie they didn't play the bubble. Well, KD was hurt, and Kyrie opted not to play in the bubble. But then
you still played
this
season.
That's not a KD and Kyrie thing.
Remember,
and again, the year after, everybody got hurt.
I didn't put it on KD and Kyrie. I said this is an organizational failure.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is from an organizational standpoint, right? Like if I'm in a Brooklyn Nets organization, obviously this is an embarrassment. Like it is embarrassing that this didn't result in something. But I feel like, and there are people out there that think that looking at context is making excuses. I don't. I think looking at context is the best way to analyze the situation. And here's the situation. Aside from the fact that KD wouldn't be in Brooklyn if it weren't for Kyrie Irving because he was on his way to the Knicks and like all the reports were pointing to that on after he decided to leave Golden State. But that's neither here nor there. Fact of the matter is he's a Brooklyn Net, whatever. They didn't play in the bubble, despite them being really good in the bubble or that one they were a decent team. But like KD and Kyrie didn't play in the bubble. So from the Nets standpoint, that season doesn't really count towards the KD Kyrie era, right? So that season's a wash. Okay, you come back the season after that, so 2 years ago, and you play really good ball. You're a top 3 seed in the East, if I'm not mistaken. You make it to the Eastern Conference semifinals, and even despite James Harden and Kyrie Irving being shells of themselves and being hurt, you still push the eventual defending champions. What was it, 6 or 7 games in that series? So, and KD was playing out of his mind that series. So, yeah, it doesn't end the way you wanted it to, but you're feeling really good coming off that series. Like, well, now we know that if at least one of our other 2 superstars on the team would have been available, we have a chance to win the chip because that's all. They would have mopped the floor with Atlanta just like the Bucks mopped the floor with Atlanta in the Eastern Conference Finals. So there's that. Again, that's another piece of like, this isn't the worst thing in the world. James Harden decides that because of Kyrie's weirdness, he doesn't want to be there anymore. Fine, I can't blame James Harden for not wanting to be there, but James Harden wants to win a championship. You're not going to win a championship along someone that doesn't want to play basketball, so you move on. Kyrie Irving, continuing to be weird, doesn't play games. On top of the fact that he chooses not to get vaccinated, which me personally, I also feel like we as fans and members of the media kind of blew that out of proportion because we knew well before the season started that Kyrie Irving wasn't going to get vaccinated. So to harp on that and to hold on to that throughout the course of the season, I thought was also pretty lazy and just immature for lack of like this. If we're really being honest, this whole thing on a grand scheme, because of on paper how talented this roster was, not winning a championship does make it a failure. But the more I think about it, the more I realize like this past season is the only actual season that you can legitimately label as a failure because of how categorically bad it was and how it ended with you being swept. You didn't have 2 superstars in the first season. You had 3 superstars and 2 of them were hurt going into your second season, and then it all just kind of fell apart at the end. So like if we're really being honest, on a grand, like if we're just looking at it from a big picture standpoint, it looks bad. And I'm not disagreeing with you that this is an organizational failure for just how much they gave up for Harden, and then Simmons also didn't play, which was also a factor that went into this as well. This most recent season was really the only bad Brooklyn Nets season we got out of this, which is why I said earlier I don't understand why we're kind of blowing this into this massive.
On top of not only just results, because it's not just a championship that you just didn't even get out the second round. On top of that, then let's look at everything that's transpired. You have a Kevin Durant, arguably one of the best players in the world, is leaving with 4 years left on his contract. Kyrie Irving, that you gave up so much money to get, is not or opted into the last year, and you're probably going to trade him. You gave up a lot to get James Harden. I know you have a player who may or may not ever play again in Ben Simmons. Like, so, and then.
But that's all the 2021-22 season, though.
And then, so,
and this is a terrible black mark. What I'm saying is, what is it from the 1920 season and the 2021 season that makes this entire thing?
The entire thing doesn't even stop there. You push a good coach like Kenny Atkinson out through the door. You watch Mike D'Antoni and Amari Stoudemire as coaches walk through the door as well, because it is clearly a dumpster fire. So it's like one thing after another. Yes, it's safe to, you can say, well, these events played out in terms of injuries, in terms of not being vaccinated, in terms of the pandemic. Yeah, you may be able to pinpoint one, but it's just one thing after another. Like right now, you have a superstar leaving your franchise with 4 years left on his contract. Like, where else is this happening? Is this on you? I don't know if you wanted to jump in, Payton, because Dwayne and Tay have really dominated the conversation thus far.
No, I just think that I think the nail in the coffin for the Nets was the James Harden trade. Imagine how much better the Nets would have been this year if they still had Caris LeVert and Jared Allen. Like,
I'm not denying
that
anything.
one. I don't blame Kevin Durant. I don't blame Kyrie Irving. I kind of agree with what Marcus is saying that sometimes things just happen and it just doesn't work out as we all think it's going to. And it is a black eye on the Nets. But if I were to pinpoint what went wrong, where did everything go downhill? It was the moment they brought in James Harden. That's where I would give the most blame to the downfall. If I had to pick one thing, it was trading for James Harden, something that looked so great at the time, but they cost themselves. They mortgaged some of their future assets and role players and a ton of draft picks and pick swaps for James Harden, for a guy that they really only got half a season out of.
Let me ask you a question. So the Sixers, I want to say, was that 4 years ago now? Just time flies. What is it, about 4 years ago? So 3 years ago, had Jimmy Butler on the roster. They lose to the Raptors in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and then that's kind of the end of it. Would you say that the 76ers have failed over the last 3 seasons?
Yeah.
But why?
Because, again,
how have the 76ers failed? They have done, stuff happens.
No, but
we're talking about,
because look again at your.
You absolutely can say stuff happens because
that's a couple.
If you,
right, you asked, so
it's not. If you throw,
let me answer your question for you.
If you throw,
so you said, how is it a failure? You traded for Jimmy Butler, and then you opted to pay Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons instead of the guy you gave up assets for. No, you no longer have Ben Simmons on your roster. And Tobias Harris, if we're supposed to believe rumors, and I do believe them, is that you're going to trade Tobias Harris to create space for another max superstar to play alongside both Joel Embiid and James Harden. So, yeah, I have to believe it's not stuff happens. That is an organizational failure.
Sixers.
So then why would you
trade? But the Sixers haven't gotten worse.
So you traded.
When we saw.
Hold on. So you traded for who was at the time your best player. You traded and gave up assets for that guy. Then when it came time to prioritize that guy you traded for, who got you to the Eastern Conference semifinals, and you pushed the team that eventually won to the only Game 7 they played the entire playoffs. That guy pushed that team to Game 7, and then you don't sign him back. So you can't say stuff happens. That is your decisions leading to where you are now, and you have not made it any further since. So that's how we can show.
Okay, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. They haven't made it any further since.
The Miami Heat to the NBA Finals and another conference finals on top of that. Those are your decisions.
They haven't made it any further since, which means that when you look at the totality of the 3 seasons the Sixers have played post Jimmy Butler, they haven't gotten any worse.
They have.
They've been no.
They lost the
roster. Series. Hold on. The roster, sure. But what I'm saying is the last time the Sixers, when Jimmy Butler was in Philadelphia, they were a second-round exit.
Right.
2 of the last 3 seasons, the Sixers have been a second-round exit. So aside from 1 season, which was the season after they traded Jimmy Butler, they've been right back where they were with Jimmy Butler.
But
I don't consider that to be a failure. And you can
has gone further each year in the playoffs than you have. So yeah, that is an organizational failure because
that's fine.
Who is to say that? So
no, but you're not. We're talking about 2 different things.
No, we're not, because then look at what you've done.
You're talking about organizational failures. I'm not disagreeing on the organizational aspect of it. Yeah, it was stupid to get rid of Jimmy Butler. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about that. Just like I agree with Payton, I think it was stupid to trade for James Harden. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you about that either. Those are organizational failures. I'm not denying that aspect of it. What I am saying is, when you look at this from a grand scheme of things, and you look at what the Brooklyn Nets have done and what the Brooklyn Nets have gone through from the bubble season when they had which was officially KD and Kyrie's first season in Brooklyn, to now, what seems to be their last season in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Nets have had 1.5 seasons of Kevin Durant. They've had 1.5 seasons of Kyrie Irving. They've had 1.5 seasons, maybe a little bit less, of James Harden. In those 1.5 seasons, there was a point in time when we looked at this basketball team as being an NBA champion. And if it were not for injury, which is life happens, they would have been an NBA champion. If it wasn't for James Harden forcing his way out, which is life happens, they probably would have made a deeper playoff run this season. I'm not going to dispute the organizational aspect of it. What I'm disputing is labeling all of this as a whole as a failure, I think is a little bit too harsh when they really only had a year and a half of the dudes they paid for 2 years ago. Some of that is stuff happens. Some of that is people are weird. That's all I'm saying. Organizationally, of course, it's boneheaded. You don't move on from a good coach like Kenny Atkinson, who looked like he was, instilling a culture into Brooklyn just to go bring in a guy that's never been a coach before. Obviously, you don't do that. You don't mortgage your future away and sacrifice depth when depth is very important. Like, those things I'm not disputing. I'm just talking about the X's and O's as far as the players. This really isn't as bad as we've made it seem, because they've only really had these guys for a year and a half. And in that year and a half, they did everything they could, given the circumstances, to be competitive. And despite Kyrie not playing basketball for more than half of the season this season, there were a lot of people that looked at the Brooklyn Nets and said, of all the play-in teams, or of all the teams that are not in the top 4 of their conference, they could be the most dangerous if Kyrie plays basketball and Kevin Durant is healthy. Unfortunately, they ran into the buzzsaw defense that is the Boston Celtics, but that is what was being said. So you've got all these great things being said, and despite all the circumstances, there was still a chance that the Nets could have, in some people's eyes, could have done the unthinkable and won the championship this past season. I think we're just being a little bit too harsh, is all.
Fair enough. Considering when you have a guy forcing his way out after 4 seasons, with 4 seasons left in contract, I typically don't agree, but I understand. So we got to get through the show. I think we already have a half hour, and that was the first of it. So, guys, I'll start with you, Payton. We know that both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving really don't want to stay there anymore. But in spite of that, should Brooklyn still try to keep them there, one or both, at least Kevin Durant, considering they may have a shot next season?
No, because you've already seen that it doesn't work. For whatever reason, whether you think it's a little bit of bad luck or it was a failure, it just wasn't going to work. And it's clearly seemed like it's kind of run its course a little bit, especially after the way that they went out last season. And now all the rumors coming out this offseason. This is a perfect chance for the Nets to go get young assets and picks and just start a whole rebuilding process. Much like the Cavs have done, the Pistons have done, the Thunder have done. And that's what they're doing now. You have to go and trade away these guys. And those teams did it without having arguably a top 3 player in the NBA and Kyrie Irving, an NBA champion and one of the best point guards in the league. So the amount of picks and young assets that you could get for these guys is through the freaking roof. This is actually, it might be a blessing in disguise for the Brooklyn Nets to go out and get younger, build towards the future, build up draft picks, and then start building, like you talked about, Justin, that culture up. That where it's not just this, okay, this is kind of like a weird situation here. It's kind of dysfunctional, but because of the stars, they're in it. No, now is your time to focus on stability, focus on building that culture, focus on getting young assets, and focus on your future draft picks.
I mean, should Brooklyn still try to fandangle whatever they can out of the 2 Ks, or just move on?
Well, by the end of this week, Kyrie Irving's going to be a Laker, so Kyrie's gone. And I'm sure that makes Neil very happy. Unfortunately, as Payton Doyle has so astutely mentioned, because of Rudy Gobert, KD's not getting traded. So KD will probably be a Brooklyn Net, but Payton knows what I'm about to say, and so I'm smirking. The Brooklyn Nets should absolutely get younger. They should absolutely move on from KD, and they should absolutely move on from Kyrie Irving, because if they make the right trades and they build the right way, we could see a playoff team in the Brooklyn Nets in the next 3 to 5 years that is built around Ben Simmons. And that is what's best for Ben. That's what's best for Brooklyn. And if we're being honest, that is the best case scenario. And building around Ben Simmons is very easy because he's 6'9", almost 250, something like that. He can pass with the best of them. He has a pretty high IQ. He's one of the more versatile defenders in the league
if not,
today when
if
he
not the
tries,
most,
when
if
he's
not the
on the
most
court.
versatile defender.
If not the most, he can defend the 1 through the 5. At his very best, it's very easy for Ben Simmons to log 12 to 15 assists a game if we're just being honest. Yeah, I know he can't shoot. I know he doesn't have a willingness to shoot, but that doesn't matter because when you do that, how do you supplement that? You just surround him with shooters and guys who can play defense. And that is what the Brooklyn Nets need. The Brooklyn Nets need that. Ben Simmons needs that. And Kyrie's gone. I don't know what they're going to get back for Kyrie. I would assume Russell Westbrook's going to be in there some way, which would make it unfortunate for them. But as far as Kevin Durant's going to be there at least for one more season because Rudy Gobert and the Minnesota Timberwolves ruined the trade market by doing so. But no, yeah, we're going to get in the next 3 to 5 years a playoff team led by Ben Simmons. And as crazy as it sounds, there was a stretch of time in his time in Philadelphia when Ben Simmons led the Sixers to a 16-game win streak when Joel Embiid was injured. So it's definitely possible.
It's crazy to say that part because I've always said I think Ben Simmons is at his best when he is the best player in the team, when the ball is in his hands. I've always said I don't think the pairing would work, and I'm not saying that in hindsight because Ben Simmons is at his best with the ball in his hands. He can't play off of it. And Joel Embiid obviously is going to take up a part of the paint or a part of the court that Ben Simmons wants to score. So to me, it's not unbelievable to think of a playoff team led by Ben Simmons because in his second year, we saw that in Philadelphia. Ben Simmons being the best player on the court when Joel Embiid was off of it. He surrounded him with shooters, balls in his hands, and he made decisions. And I think, Brooklyn having to build around Ben Simmons is not a terrible idea. I thought maybe they should try being Brooklyn, try to convince Kevin Durant to stay. But the unfortunate situation is that the two men are a package deal. That's why they got Kevin Durant in the first place, because they convinced Kyrie Irving to come on over. And I don't see a scenario where they can keep one. You can keep Kevin Durant and not have Kyrie Irving on the roster. And I do not see Kyrie Irving playing another second of basketball in a Brooklyn uniform. I just don't see that happening. I think both sides are forward on each other, and I agree with Dwayne. It's just a matter of when, not if Kyrie Irving becomes a Laker, because let's be honest, there is no other team that wants him. And I think this segues perfectly into the next question. So Dwayne, lead it off. Where will Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving play next season, although you kind of answered those questions just now?
Well, Kyrie's going to be playing in this third NBA championship with LeBron James. Kevin Durant will be sitting at home in Brooklyn. And I'm not just saying that because Neil is here, right? Well, I usually make my pick in August. So we've got 19 days left, about a little less than 3 weeks. I do think that if all things stand as is today, I have the Warriors going back to the finals. But it is very hard to deny the chemistry that exists between LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. I think the one thing that is interesting about this whole Kyrie thing with Brooklyn is that there is a chance that maybe, just maybe, Kyrie's leash was a little bit too long. Kyrie was on I Am Athlete, or I think either I Am Athlete or the Pivot Pod. They all have the same host, so I really don't know which one it was. He was on one of them a couple of weeks ago. He was talking about his. That's what I thought. He was talking about his decision to leave or want out of Cleveland and how he felt he was young and immature and just thought that he needed it. We've seen that movie before. We've kind of seen situations where teams and players kind of break away because one party thinks they need something else and then come back and lead to success, right? Look no further than Al Horford being bought back to Boston this season, and look where that led them, to the NBA Finals. I think that despite his decision, and I don't think this was ever not the case, and I know we tried to make it into that and it never really was that, because we tried to kind of compare it to the whole Russ and KD thing, but I don't think there was ever any bad blood between Kyrie and LeBron James. I just really think that Kyrie Irving was kind of I want to kind of do my own thing and kind of be the guy on a championship winning team. I think he's recognized that, one, maybe he's not built that way, but two, maybe he's recognized that he has so many interests outside of basketball that he can't handle that right now. Why not go back to LeBron? The chemistry is there already. It's rendered success. We're talking 3 straight trips to the NBA Finals and a championship there. Then the thing would become for the Lakers is building around those two to get them there. As far as Kevin Durant, though, he'll be back in Brooklyn. I don't see the only option for Kevin Durant. He's got 2 options. He's either going to Portland, he's going to OKC, or he's staying in Brooklyn. That's really it. Like, either the Portland Trailblazers recognize that Dame really wants to compete and he's truly committed, and he'll be the first player since Clyde to actually be legitimately committed to the Portland Trailblazers and trying to win a championship. Either they recognize that and try to just swallow their pride and make that trade, or Kevin Durant goes back home to OKC. I think it's been 6 years. The wound isn't as fresh. In fact, it shouldn't be as fresh. I don't think it'll sting that much. I think he'll be received in open arms because I think OKC fans and OKC front office will recognize that he could be the difference between at least getting them to be competitive. And as long as they can keep SGA, Chet, and Josh Giddey, I think that's massive. They have the most picks for any stretch of time in the history of basketball. They can afford to give up a lot of picks and not really have to sacrifice any depth. And when we're talking about reports of apparently the Nets having called the Timberwolves for Cat and 4 first rounders and 4 pick swaps, the Thunder can give up all those picks and maybe a little bit more, not how to give any players, and maybe that's what the Nets want. But more than likely, Kevin Durant will be a Brooklyn Net. I wouldn't be shocked if he's not, but I just think it's just too unlikely. The writing's on the wall for Kyrie. I'm thinking by the time you come back on this show next Monday, Kyrie Irving will have officially been announced as a Los Angeles Laker.
Fade, you think same thing? You think Kyrie's in LA, KD stays in Brooklyn, or something else happens?
I mean, no, I think Kyrie is definitely going to LA. I think that's the only place that kind of really wants him, and also he's interested in playing for. Also, Marcus said it. Rudy Gobert ruined this for Kevin Durant. Like, the fact that Rudy Gobert on the trade market the Utah Jazz received 5 players, 4 picks and a pick swap for Rudy Gobert, a man who is the most overrated defensive player in the history of the game, is a terrible offensive player, gets nothing but garbage buckets and just cleans the glass and defends the paint, which is one of the most useless forms of defense in today's NBA because you have to guard the perimeter. They got all of that for that guy. And now Sean Marks is like, okay, I'm feeling myself. I'm going to go call Minnesota since they're looking for making deals, and I'm going to ask for Ant Edwards, 4 first-round picks, and Karl Anthony Towns. That's not just a team mortgaging their future for Kevin Durant. That's a team mortgaging their present and future for Kevin Durant. That's giving up everything for Kevin Durant. I can honestly see a scenario Brooklyn Nets can't move Kevin Durant because no team can afford to pay the price that they're asking for him. And we're starting to see this now. When Kevin Durant first requested a trade, Woj reported that literally half the NBA was interested in trading for Kevin Durant. Where are they now? Where are they now? Because they called and they said, this is our offer. And Sean Marks was like, no, I need more. And they're like, well, we literally can't give more. Like, we can't play 1-on-5 basketball here with Kevin Durant. Plus, if you're a team, are you willing to mortgage your future for 33-year-old Kevin Durant? You would have no real role players around him. You're mortgaging your future for 33-year-old Kevin Durant, given he's great right now, but he's 33. He's had an injury history, and we know if you're not winning, he'll leave you. Are you willing to mortgage your entire future for that? Huh?
I agree with everything up until the last part. I don't think we know that Kevin Durant would leave if they're not
What do you mean
winning.
he's doing it right now?
Well, this is different. This is different. But this is also the first time in Kevin Durant's career that he has left a team with a contract with multiple years left on his contract because they're not winning. You know what I mean? Like, this is the only time KD's done that, right? When he left OKC to go to Golden State, he was a free agent. When he left Golden State to come to Brooklyn, he was a free agent. Like, this is the first time in KD's career he's left with years on his contract. I don't think we can label him quite yet as one that's ready to leave because, not that he's not, but I don't know if he fits in that bucket quite yet, is all I'm saying.
I feel like he definitely is. I don't think it's a knock on him. I think
No, I mean it's not a
he's
knock. I
willing
just
to
don't know
move.
if he
He's
would.
mobile. He wants to go where he feels like he can win. And right now, he doesn't feel like he could win in Brooklyn. He couldn't deal with the relationship between him and the Warriors, and that's why he left. And obviously, he felt like he couldn't win in OKC with Russ, and that's why he left. So if
That was
if
proven he
having your
couldn't win in
best friend
OKC
on the
with
team
Russ.
couldn't even keep you in Brooklyn, I mean, what else would it take for him to go? I mean, now, yes, you bring up the point where, okay, this is the first time where he's requesting to leave with a current contract on his team. Well, yeah, it's also the first time any superstar of his caliber has decided to do this while having 4 years remaining on their contract, which is what makes this so incredibly unique of a situation. And that's why I just feel like until there's an actual reasonable price for Kevin Durant in a trade, this is going to stall for as long as it possibly can because teams are not willing to give up their entire future and their entire team right now to get Kevin Durant.
I will say this. I think we all know Kyrie Irving is going to LA because LeBron is the only person who wants to deal with him. I don't even want to say LA because I've seen what Genie Bus put up there, and I know that was a shot at LeBron James. But I think at this stage, LeBron James is the only person who thinks legitimately they can deal with Kyrie Irving, and he probably is right because the time they spent together, we did not hear a single peep rumblings of the nonsense that was going on, and apparently there were some shenanigans going on underneath the whole veil of winning. But when you win, these things don't come out. So yeah, I believe Kyrie Irving is going to go LA. I think Brooklyn is going to finally come down from their high horse, and they're going to have to deal with either Boston or my team, Phoenix Suns, because I think like it looks weird. It sounds weird for you to say, but when you look at the packages, what Brooklyn wants is a player who is either an all-star or the cusp of one, and multiple picks. So where Boston is concerned, they have the package that could offer Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams, and multiple picks. It's for me, if Boston really wants that, if they want to really give up that. If I'm Boston, I would actually do it. It's just that, again, is Robert Williams? Yeah, I would. And I would give up Robert Williams and Jaylen Brown in a heartbeat. Like, they need more.
You'd give up a defensive player of the year candidate and the second best player on the team for a guy who plays a position that you don't have a need at.
I mean, reality situation
Why?
is a basketballer. It's not like Jason Tatum and Kevin Durant alongside Al Horford can't play together. Like, it will happen.
That's the Boston Celtics
Like,
played 6 games in the NBA Finals.
so hold on, Dwayne. Let's be honest. If you plug Kevin Durant next to Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and you have no Gordon, Malcolm Brogdon, with Jaylen Brown and Robert Williams, what exactly are you losing that you can't replicate?
You're losing an interior defensive presence, one of the best interior defensive presences in basketball, and you're losing wing defensive presence, which are the two things that kept them remotely involved in the championship picture this season.
Yeah, but
you're not
upgrading.
It's the Brooklyn Nets all over again with better role players and a better, more reliable number 2 option. There's still no defense on the basketball team.
True.
And we sat and we did all this talking about slandering Marcus Smart, my bad. We did all this one guy who plays
That's not true,
the
because
one.
when you look at the roster as constructed, you'd still have Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon, the defensive player of the year, and an extremely great versatile wing defender who can defend.
Are either of those two going to be stopping Giannis or Joel Embiid?
Jaylen Brown can't either, neither did Robert Williams. So, like, when you plug him in,
would you rather have Robert Williams matched up with Giannis or Joel Embiid, or Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon matched up?
You can find, like, let's be honest, and I like Robert Williams to a point, but are you seeing then the combination of Jaylen Brown and Robert Williams are better than a Kevin Durant? They have to say no, because
I'm you're talking
No,
offense.
but
Offensively, obviously
right,
not.
but
Defensively,
even
absolutely. That's
defensively,
two players that play good defense and one guy that doesn't play defense.
right. So
Yes.
then when you look again, you still have defensive player of the year in Marcus Smart. You have Malcolm Brogdon who defends three positions. You have Jason Tatum who is a very 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 good wing defender. Kevin Durant is not a bad defender by any stretch of the imagination, and Al Horford, for what it is worth, is a good defender, not a rim protector. And let us be honest, like you can find a rim protector, probably not at the level of a Robert Williams. Robert Williams is an elite rim protector. But as Payton just mentioned, rim protection in today's NBA is not as needed as it was in the past. Like, ask yourself, roll back to the seeing NBA Finals. Where was Boston's problem in defending? It was defending Steph Curry on those high pick and rolls. It wasn't protecting rim because let's be honest, none of the Golden State Warriors want to score at the rim. So, like,
Okay, that's one team in the NBA when there's two teams in Boston's conference that have an elite presence in the paint.
yeah, when you could find a rim
That
protector,
that
but
the Golden State argument means nothing when we're talking about getting to the finals.
but again,
Getting to the finals, you have to go through Embiid and Giannis.
so
Most
ask
likely.
you, are you willing to keep the Boston Celtics as is over getting?
The Boston Celtics as is are better than the last time we saw the Boston Celtics on a
So
basketball.
you'd rather keep the Boston Celtics as is than trade for Kevin Durant?
Would I rather keep the Boston Celtics, who improved where they needed to improve, the team that we just saw a little over a month ago on an NBA Finals court, or would I rather trade away the second best player and my best defender for a guy that both you and Payton have admitted is aging and you wouldn't sacrifice your
Y'all
future
said,
for? You're asking.
y'all said y'all would not
No, I
sacrifice
didn't say
it.
that. I didn't
I
say that.
didn't.
I did not say that. I didn't say that. Why would I say I'm not going to sacrifice my future with Kevin Durant and then sacrifice my future for Kevin Durant? No, I wouldn't make
Well,
that.
the other team, I think, are in serious runnings for Boston Celtics, and it's not just because they're my team, but because Kevin Durant mentioned them, the Phoenix Suns. Not only did he mention them, but when you look at the package that the Phoenix Suns can offer, unless Brooklyn honestly does not want DeAndre Ayton, which apparently is what is being bandied about there, is that the Phoenix Suns can offer DeAndre Ayton, Miles Bridges, and Cam Johnson on top of multiple picks. And I am not sure there is another team who can match that offer if the Boston Celtics are not willing to give up Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams, and picks.
That could match that offer. I think the Heat could supersede
Yeah,
that
but the
offer,
problem is
actually.
then that the Heat would be left back with Jimmy Butler and nothing else.
That's not true.
Who else would be there? Because you're going to have to give up Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero. Like, it starts there.
Okay.
And
You don't have to give up Tyler Hero to get Kevin Durant.
but that's what Brooklyn said. Like, you have to start with Bam and Tyler Hero. That's what they said. So, like,
They can't even
You can
trade Bam.
but you
Pardon?
don't. That's not true. They can trade Bam. It'd have to be a 3-team trade.
Oh.
You can trade Bam. You can keep Tyler Hero. You can trade other players off the bench and picks
but
and get
this
Kevin
is not
Durant.
my words. Again, these Brooklyn Nets. They said any trade with Miami has to start with Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero. And I would.
What I'm saying is there are better packages that exist that don't include Tyler Hero that the Heat can offer. Is what I'm saying.
I'm not sure. For me, if I'm taking it, it has to start with Bam and Tyler Hero. But guys, then in this situation, then we've gone through the mess, and for me, as I said, I think I can see Kevin Durant on the Boston Celtics or his Phoenix Suns, and we all know Kyrie Irving is likely a Laker by next season. Sorry, by next week, if not next month. Guys, me personally, this is an organizational failure. Payne, I'll go with you here. In light of what has happened in Brooklyn, should Steve Nash and Sean Marks still retain their roles as head coach and general manager?
As of right now, yes, because there was a lot of bad luck involved in this. A lot of injuries happened. A lot of things transpired that made it so that it wasn't all on them. It's not all on Sean Marks. It's not really all on anyone. It was just all around it. It just kind of crumbled. So I think as of right now, yes, Steve Nash should have his job and Sean Marks should have his job. And this is a good opportunity for both of them to prove that they're actually quality at their job. Because now they're not going to have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in their ear about everything they have to do. They're actually able to go and do their job and coach and manage a team as well.
Do you think, Dwayne, should both men go? Should one man go? Or should they both stay and show that they deserve their jobs?
Sean Marks isn't bad at his job. I don't think Steve Nash is bad at his job either. I think they tried to build an empire on a rocky foundation. And if you look through the courses of history, that doesn't always work.
Short and sweet. For me, I'd get rid of both. And again, I know people think that this is a hot take, but reality is, if we're honest with ourselves, Steve Nash should not have had a job in the first place. He has absolutely no head coaching experience. I guess you could see the same with Steve Kerr, and it worked out. But no, there's nothing that shows me during time that he was there in Brooklyn prior to Raven in Brooklyn that Steve Nash deserved this job. When you see all of these other franchises going after younger assistant coaches who have worked their way through the ranks. Like,
just real quick, just because you said that, was there any reason to believe that Steve Kerr deserved his job or could prove that he was a good head coach before he got hired by the Warriors?
Well, to be quite frank, no. But the difference is that Steve Kerr wasn't handed a job with, I want to say, a ton of superstars. We forget, because we go with revisionist history, when Steve Kerr got the job, Steph Curry was on the rise. Klay Thompson was not even an all-star. Neither was Draymond Green.
I'm very aware of that. I didn't mention that. What I'm saying is...
So the difference is, right, so Draymond Green wasn't even starting by the time that's when Steve Kerr first signed up for the job. Klay Thompson was an all-star. The difference with Steve Nash, Steve Nash had an MVP, walked into a situation where he had an MVP, arguably the best player in the world at that time that he got it, and a player both players had already won titles. Like, you're walking in.
What does that have to do with what does that have to do with the qualifications or the lack thereof of having the job?
What I'm telling you is that one man had walked into a title-made team. The other man, as much as I didn't think that Steve Kerr should have gotten the job, at least Steve Kerr can sit down and say this team was not exactly a title-made team. It became one, sure, and yes, we saw what they did under Mark Jackson, but it's not like this team was chock full of superstars. He didn't walk into a team with two ready-made superstars, both of whom have won titles already. Steph Curry has yet to win a title at that time. As I said, Klay Thompson was not an all-star. Draymond Green wasn't even starting at the time that he took the head coaching job. But again, I didn't think Steve Kerr deserved the job, so I was wrong there. I definitely don't think that Sean Marks deserves his, because his fingerprints are all over this. And again, it is no knock on Sean Marks. I don't think he's a bad person. I don't think he's necessarily terrible at his job. I would not knock anybody for swinging for the fences for Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. But when you look at what has transpired, and I know Dwayne feels it's unfair, but the reality is things have transpired, and they've transpired underneath you. And in the world we live in, they are like, somebody has to be made accountable. And you can point these decisions to you. So let's start. Forget going after Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Anybody would have done the same thing. Again, none of us would have signed DeAndre Jordan to a massive contract. Most of us would not have put Steve Nash in as a rookie head coach with a team that was ready to win a title. None of us would have pushed Kenny Atkinson out through the front door to allow this to happen. But you look one after another, then you sit down to see it was such a dumpster fire that anybody worth their salt wanted to get away. Like, Kenny Atkinson now has such a desirable person. You sit down to see the Golden State Warriors begged him not to go and be the Charlotte Hornets coach because they know how good of a coach he is as an assistant head coach. Charlotte literally begged this man to be their head coach before he walked away. And then you let Kenny Atkinson walk through the front door. Furthermore, then because Steve Nash has such loyalty and believes in Mike D'Antoni, bring him Mike D'Antoni, and Mike realizes what a dumpster fire he is. After one season, Mike D'Antoni walks through the front door. So too does Amari Stoudemire. Like, anyone with a modicum of credibility behind their name no longer wanted a part of what's going on. And whether that is Kyrie Irving, whether that's Kevin Durant, all of this points to you. You are the general manager. All of this happened under your watch, whether you're directly responsible or not. Neil and I have a conversation about these things all the time, and we talk about it. You aren't paid for the amount of duties you have in any job. So you have a VP, you're a CEO, you're a chief financial controller. You're not paid for the duties you have. You are paid for the level of accountability that you have. So in other words, when things go wrong, you are paid the big bucks because the buck stops at you. And I have to say, Sean Marks, whether you have no control over pandemic, you have no control over what Kyrie Irving does, you have no control over his injury history. The problem is these things, like all of your organizational failure, you are the tight man. And you are going to have to answer at some point for some of the moves you've made. You gave up everything for James Harden, then you walked through the door. You pushed Kenny Atkinson, who is a highly desired coach. You brought in Steve Nash, who's never coached a lick of basketball before this, whether PV, whether college, whether assistant coach, certainly not NBA head coach. You sat down and watched, you bring incredible assistants, and they wanted no part of the dumpster fire. No, arguably one of the best players in NBA and a top 20 player of all time without a shadow of a doubt is walking through the door or once out with 4 years left on his contract. As Payton and you alluded to, this is historic. Like how often do we see a superstar at this level of their career with 4 years remaining in their contract asking to go out? That's on you. Then you bring in Kyrie Irving with him, and he does not want to be there. He's opting in only because the market dried on him, and he has obviously no one's going to give up the $40 million that's owed to them when there's no market for you other than the Lakers mid-level exception. This is on you. Like whether you're completely directly responsible for it or not, it happened under your watch, and I just can't see. For my money, I am not thinking that Sean Marks is a bad general manager, but you can't have all these mishaps happening and a big three that never happened, that you assemble. Everyone is gone. Like Kevin Durant does not want to be there. Kyrie Irving will not be there. James Harden is no longer there. So the fruits of your labor for bringing in those three players, when it's all said and done, your return is Ben Simmons. Yeah, that's on you. I don't know if you wanted to respond, guys.
I feel like you're being a little bit too hard. I think the tune you're taking now is slightly different from the tune you took towards the top of the show when you acknowledged that Steve Nash being the head coach was at the behest of KD and Kyrie, and that James Harden being on the team was at the behest of KD and Kyrie. And if you were in Sean Marks' shoes and you had two superstar talents on your roster and you were trying to win a championship, I'd like to think that if they walked into your office and said, hey, can you trade for this other superstar talent, I'd like to think that you would have traded for James Harden too. Hire Steve Nash? Probably not. I wouldn't have done that. But trade for a third superstar to join forces with the two superstars you had on the roster, I'd like to think you would have made that decision. I like to think that bringing in Mike D'Antoni was at the behest of Steve Nash, and given how prolific and how successful Mike D'Antoni and Steve Nash were in the early 2000s, I'm not. I didn't say you were bringing in Mike D'Antoni as, assistant to Steve Nash, given how prolific they were with the 7-second offense back in the early 2000s. To then blame Sean Marks for Mike D'Antoni leaving just doesn't make sense. To blame Sean Marks for Amari Stoudemire leaving just doesn't make sense. The only thing legitimately that we can actually blame Sean Marks for would be the James Harden trade. What? Like, Sean Marks didn't tell Kyrie not to get vaccinated. He didn't tell Kyrie to not play games. He didn't tell Ben Simmons not to show up and play ball once he got there. He didn't tell KD to get hurt. Like, I'm not.
But you're missing my point.
I don't know.
Because they didn't blame Sean Marks. I said, it is not.
No, I'm not saying you blame Sean Marks, but what you did was you listed all of these things that went wrong and said that because of these things, this is why Sean Marks should go, because they happened on his watch. And all the things you listed, Sean Marks wasn't the only person that made the decision.
Right, but you just
Like, I understand he is the
when
general
superstars
manager.
come in again, and go to organizational structure. Let's take, for instance, what happens in Miami. Do you know, and I'm sure the rumors have been by now, we've all read, there was a point in time that LeBron James was upset with what Eric Spoelstra was going on, and he went upstairs to Pat Riley and told him to come down and coach or find someone else. You do know that Pat Riley refused to budge. You do know.
There's two different things. Eric Spoelstra has been a part of the Miami Heat organization from the time he was a
and
20-year-old child. Like, that's not the same thing. It's incomparable.
But that's what I'm saying. Yes, it is the same thing. And that's what I'm saying. Because Pat Riley didn't budge. Pat Riley didn't cave to superstars walking in his school and say,
Pat Riley has won multiple championships. Sean Marks was trying to win his first.
And so, again, you're still making my point then. So when these guys come in, you have an organizational structure.
So Sean Marks should be fired and lose his job for swinging for the fences and trying to win a championship, is essentially what you're saying.
Sean Marks should be fired for not being able to set a culture and then caving into superstars. Like, as I said, whether you feel that he is directly responsible or not, the way the world works in terms of offices, in terms of job structure, there are levels of accountability, and you're paid for these things. So, like, it is no different from a company.
He's also paid to deliver a championship to the Brooklyn Nets, which is what he was trying to do.
The other day, years ago, BP had an oil spill. Guess what happened? You think the CEO drives any of those boats up there? Guess who's the first person that had to go? That's how accountability works. You may think, oh, but that's not his responsibility. He doesn't drive a ship. He didn't crash or hit the ground. But accountability works. You are paid these big bucks. This is APR nightmare. This starts at you. And that's, again, I keep saying, this is why you are paid money. You're not paid money for the level of duties you have. You're paid money for the level of accountability that owns up. And when two superstars walk into your office and tell you to swing for James Harden and the James Harden trade doesn't work, when they tell you to sign DeAndre Jordan and DeAndre Jordan doesn't work out, when they tell you to get Steve Nash and that doesn't work out, guess whose signature goes on those things? It's not Kevin Durant. It's not Kyrie Irving. Your signature is on it. And the end of the day, when the owner looks, he's not going to say Kevin Durant signed this guy. He's not going to say Kyrie Irving signed this guy. He's going to say you signed these guys because you had the authority to say no. And if it meant that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant were going to walk out, your name is still on those signatures. Those contracts carry your signature. Those deals carry your signature. The level of accountability stops at you. So it's easy to say, oh,
I don't even know his name. I can't think of his name right now. Jeez. But, like, should Daryl Morey be fired from Philadelphia if in 2 or 3 years they don't have a championship? Should what's his face? I can't even think of his name. Like, should winning a championship?
But it's not just winning a championship. You have a guy under contract with 4 more years left, walking out through the door. 4 more.
Okay, but the point,
that's on you. Like, you have a superstar
point that
walking out that you signed. You brought him in,
the point
and he's walking up. Then who's it on?
I haven't disagreed with you that it's not on Sean Marks. You're trying to drive home a point that you've already driven home. I got it. What I'm saying is, whether you're a player, a coach, a GM, a owner, whatever, you get into the business of sports to win a championship. Sean Marks is the GM of a basketball team that, last time I checked, hasn't won a championship in eons. Like, he is trying to win a championship. You do not fire your general manager for trying to win a championship just because things fall apart. Like, it is hard to win a championship. And as I said at the top of the show, life happened. This isn't a situation where everything went perfectly and it just didn't work out. Or this isn't a situation where Like, at all times, all the players were available, and there were just really bad decisions being made. Like, again, as I said earlier, if they win a championship or even make it to the finals, we're not calling for Sean Marks to be
But they
fired.
didn't.
We're not sitting here. Okay, but they didn't. But what I'm saying is the same way that we roughly 2 years ago sat and we all said, "Oh, the Brooklyn Nets are going to win a championship because of all of these decisions," to now sit here and say that the man should be fired because it didn't work out, I think is absurd. Because stuff happens, and you're not no matter how talented the roster is, you're not guaranteed to win a championship. The Golden State Warriors went 73-9. They lost in the finals. Like, we see talented teams fall short from winning championships all
But
the
there's a
time. The
difference.
Heat in
But then you're
2011,
not.
very
But then you're
talented
not.
team, didn't win
I
the
think the problem
championship.
is you're separate. You're saying not winning the championship and Brooklyn. Like, those are two different things. Like, you not winning a championship is one thing. That's not the same as Kevin Durant with 4 years left on his contract walking up through the door. That's a completely different. Like,
It's Sean Marks' fault that Kevin Durant doesn't want to be in Brooklyn
so
anymore,
then,
is your
so
point.
here's my question.
Is what I'm asking. So let me ask that
So,
question.
to
Is that
answer
what you're
your
saying?
direct question, if the rumors are true, yes, because the rumors.
Okay. And so
So-
my response to that is there are more things, and I've said this on Twitter like 1,000 times. There are more things that are going on in Kevin Durant's life that can attribute to him wanting to no longer be in Brooklyn. Like,
But then who's they are? But then, right? So let me get to that. So the rumors have it that Kevin Durant wants out because of how they've treated Kyrie Irving, which again I can't blame Brooklyn for because no one would want Kyrie Irving. So then, if your superstar wants out for 4 years left on his contract, is it not on you then for not being able to convince him to stay, although he has a lucrative contract? Then who's on that? Then who is on that then? Like, who then do you see? Well, this top 5 best player in the league wants to leave still on the back end of his prime with 4 more years left on his deal. Whose fault is that then? Like, then, so we're saying then to just ignore.
I think it's Kyrie Irving's fault that Kevin Durant wants to leave, and I'm on record as saying that. So I mean that's an easy answer for me. It's a very easy answer for me because Kevin Durant wouldn't be in Brooklyn if it wasn't for Kyrie Irving. I'm not going to blame Sean Marks for Kevin Durant having jumped. You know, we I don't know if you did, but Payton and I have, I'm sure, have heard the saying 1,000 times from our parents. If your friends tell you to jump off a cliff, are you going to? Well, Kevin Durant jumped off a cliff with his friend, and it resulted in nothing. Like, that's just, I blame Kyrie for Kevin Durant not wanting to be there because Kyrie Irving has prioritized things outside of basketball. All Kevin Durant does is play basketball. He doesn't have a kid, he doesn't have a wife, he doesn't have a girlfriend. He wakes up every day for the sole purpose of wanting to get up, play basketball, and potentially win a championship. I don't think that's Sean Marks' fault. And even if it was, even if Sean Marks did have something to do with potentially Kevin Durant wanting to leave, I'm still not going to look at all of the decisions that Sean Marks made that just 2 years ago were hailed as brilliant decisions and now say that those exact same decisions are reasons why he should be unceremoniously kicked out the door. That's all I'm
I
saying.
didn't hail them as good decisions. So, guys, beyond.
You didn't think the trade for James Harden was a good decision when it happened?
It depends on.
I think I recall having a conversation with you about James Harden and you saying that this is what could probably push them over the edge and have them win a championship.
But the reality is he didn't even stay.
Okay.
But he didn't stay. So then you can't say, but he didn't stay. So like you gave up all this time for a guy who didn't stay.
It's not Sean Marks' fault James Harden didn't stay. You said earlier that it's Kyrie Irving's fault that James Harden didn't stay.
No, I didn't.
So because James Harden
did not. That's not me. Guys, we can
Justin. All right.
Guys, so that's not the only part of free agency. $1.5 billion went out in the first couple of hours of free agency to 7 players, and that didn't even have anything to do with Jalen Brunson's $104 million contract in New York. So, Payton, what has been the biggest offseason surprise for you?
The biggest surprise to me was the Rudy Gobert trade by far, and I know I got into that earlier. I know Jalen Brunson was a little bit of a surprise, but like we kind of suspected that he was going to be demanding a lot of big money in free agency, and of course the Knicks would be the one that paid him. They're desperate for a guard, And it might work out, but I doubt it will. To me, the Jalen Brunson situation reminds me of Terry Rozier when he had that great playoff run with Boston. And then the Charlotte Hornets signed him to a huge deal, and he just never really lived up to that. I kind of see that playing out there with Jalen Brunson in New York. Gobert trade was just the biggest shock to me. That was when I got the notification on my phone, aside from the fact that Durant requested a trade. When I got the notification on my phone that Rudy Gobert had been traded to Minnesota, I was like, okay. But then when I saw what the package was for, I was like, oh wow. And that was just, I got into it earlier, so I won't go on my whole spiel about how Rudy Gobert is the most overrated defender ever, and he honestly just you gave up that much. You're the Timberwolves. You gave up that much, right? And you're still not better than Denver in the West. Yeah, like you know what I mean? Like you are not you might have jumped one or two teams in the West if you're the Timberwolves in terms of standing by getting Rudy Gobert. Probably not even. And now you're going to have Karl Anthony Towns playing a glorified Brook Lopez role where he's going to have to stand in the corner awkwardly through the entire offense. I mean, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit schematically. You broke the bank to go get this guy, and he's not the guy worth breaking the bank for, and you ruined the trade market, basically, is what you did. So, yeah, the Timberwolves, they have a history of head-scratching moves, so I'm not exactly surprised.
Is it something else other than the Rudy Gobert trade, Dwayne, or was that easily the biggest surprise in the offseason?
It's not often you trade for an all-star and your team gets worse, but that's what's happened with the Timberwolves. Their team is worse. They still don't. It's the Minnesota Timberwolves. I mean, what good team exists in Minnesota? Like the Timberwolves suck. The Twins stink. The Vikings are trash. There's not a good team in Minnesota. This is another boneheaded big money decision by Minnesota front office. And Rudy Gobert. It's nice that he dyed his look. The one thing that you and Rudy Gobert have in common is the patch of hair up there. And he went into his openest presser and he said, "Oh, we're gonna get this team to the finals." Yeah, but buy tickets, pal. Because that's the only way you're getting there is if you buy tickets. Because the Minnesota Timberwolves aren't going to the finals ever. They've never been, if I'm not mistaken, and that will continue to be this way. Zion gets paid. That was actually the biggest shock to me. Zion getting paid. I'll be honest. Zion gets paid by the Pelicans. You've got Dame coming back, and they traded for Jeremy Grant. They're likely going to be getting a little bit better. Like the Thunder are going to be a good team. The Spurs, they'll probably drop off a bit. But there's so many good teams in the West, and the Timberwolves thought instead of going and getting another option to score the basketball, let's go get, as Payton said earlier, the most overrated, screw defensive player, the most overrated basketball player in the history of the sport. Like, come on now.
So, for me, before I get to that situation, it was shocking to see this NBA free agency. Well, not shocking because we all kind of knew that no one really moved. And, we're all hoping for Zach LaVine to reach free agency. Then we realized he was not going to leave Chicago. Bradley Beal wasn't going to leave Washington, and Dame re-up. We saw Karl Anthony Towns sign his big max extension. So too, Devin Booker, and we can go on and on. Everyone just decided to up home. Nikola Jokic, we go on and on and on. So I think with Nikola Jokic's contract, I think 4 centers now have signed deals of over. It's still 4. It's still 3. 3 centers have. No, Joel Embiid doesn't have a contract over $200 million.
He didn't sign a $200 million contract, no.
But
not a supermax.
Yeah.
No.
So there you go. 3 centers have contracts of over $200 million. The Minnesota Timberwolves have 2 of them. 2 of them.
And neither of them are good.
2 of them. And I can't believe for the life of me why you think this is going to fit. Like Pete mentioned, you're going to have to put Karl Anthony Towns out on the perimeter. And if you thought that Karl Anthony Towns is a bad inside defender, just wait till he has to mark mobile fours out on the perimeter for an entire season. You gave up your best perimeter defender. Granted, he's a role player. a Patrick Beverley that runs his mouth more than he runs his legs in the league. But all the same, you gave up a ton of draft capital, decent role players for a guy that really doesn't move the needle for you because now you're about to expose. Forget what Rudy Gobert does in the paint. We've already talked about interior defense in today's NBA does not mean as much as it did in the 90s and early 2000s. Now you're going to put two horrifically bad perimeter defenders and expose them even further because not only are you putting Karl Anthony Towns out on the perimeter, guess who is out there with him as well? Guess who's out there? Let's take a wild guess. D'Angelo Russell is also out there, and he is just as bad, if not an even worse defender than Karl Anthony Towns. So now you have gotten rid of Patrick Beverley, an irritant, a defensive stopper, to push Karl Anthony Towns on the perimeter next to D'Angelo Russell. I mean, the only thing good defensively out on the perimeter you have is Ant-Man. This is going to get terrible. And the funny thing is, for a stretch of the season, Minnesota was actually being good on defense. Like, Minnesota was putting a lot of their stock defensively. Granted, I think they led the league in scoring, but it just doesn't work. And I don't know. But yeah, y'all already said everything about Rudy Gobert. So let's go with the fact that a lot of people they move, and Jalen Brunson's contract's terrible. I don't know for the life of me what you think that Jalen Brunson's going to push this terrible roster over the top. A small guard in a league that, I don't know, we go on to more important stuff. Yeah. Guys, we've seen now Brittney Griner has been detained in Russia for quite a time, and now she has indeed pled guilty to trafficking illegal substances in Russia. Dwayne, I know you feel very strong about the situation. What are your thoughts on the current Brittney Griner situation in Russia?
With all due respect to the men and women that sacrificed their freedom so that the four of us can have ours. Well, three of us. Neil lives in Barbados. It's things like this make me hate America. I gotta be honest. There's people that hate the Roe v. Wade thing. There's people that hate that. That's cool. I hate that stuff too. But it's this stuff. This is the stuff that makes me hate America. We're talking about and people that don't watch women's basketball are going to say this is crazy. We're talking about an athlete in Brittney Griner that is on the same level in the WNBA that LeBron and Giannis and Steph and KD are in the NBA. This is a very influential athlete. This is I'm not even going to use the tired comparisons of if this was LeBron or someone else. Let's be honest. If this was any member of the CIA, FBI, or something, this wouldn't have hit almost what we're talking about is now approaching 5 or 6 months now. It'd have been home. If this was any member of the White House cabinet or the Secret Service or some random senator's Secret Service from Alabama, it would have been home already. I don't understand. I do. It's all a political thing, but Brittney Griner should be home. I'm not understanding what the issue is. I feel like this is an open and shut thing. There is a country that is holding hostage an American citizen, and she should be home. I've seen and read about the government being more aggressive about bringing journalists back to America than a WNBA basketball player who has a massive platform, who's done so many things for her community, both as a woman, as a Black woman, giving back to her community from where she's from, speaking up for LGBT. I can go on, and I for the life of me cannot understand why Brittney Griner is still sitting in a Russian detainment facility with a chance of potentially facing up to 10 years in prison for committing a crime she didn't even know she was committing. I'm not understanding why there's not some sense of urgency. I don't get it. America's been more adamant about bringing home, let's be honest. If the three of us were hostage somewhere, they would have sent a SEAL team by now to come extract us. And I love all of us, but we're nobodies compared to Brittney Griner. And she's sitting at home or sitting in Russia while her wife is at home, and she can't talk to her wife as much as she would like. She can't be comfortable. She can't play the game that she loves. And by the way, she was only over there because she can't make a living just by herself in the WNBA because the WNBA doesn't play enough. But that has nothing to do with this. The point is, she was over there working. She committed a crime she didn't know she was committing, and we're approaching, if my math is correct, 5 months of her being in Russia. And this is LeBron, if this was Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, Venus Williams, everything that Twitter says. High-ranking government official, some random journalist for the Post. The three of us, they would have been actual efforts, legitimate, aggressive efforts to bring Brittney Griner home. And the fact that she's still over there is just flat out unacceptable. And it's stuff like this that really makes me hate this country. I gotta be honest.
P, how do you feel about the current situation?
I mean, I'm not really sure about the process in which it would take for getting her home, to be honest with you. I know nothing about that. I mean, it's unfortunate. It is. It's an unfortunate situation. And sadly, it's just another example of, like, before you go to a place, especially a place that's, currently at war, a place like Russia that is not really too fond of Americans right now, make sure you know what is on you and what's going on before you bring a foreign substance or something or break a law, whether it's a mistake or not a mistake, in a foreign country, because this kind of stuff is, I mean, it's unfortunate. And I don't, like I said, I don't know what their procedure is on bringing people home. So I'm obviously going to stay out of that because I don't want to talk about something I don't know anything about. But it's an unfortunate situation, and I hope that, everything works out. She's safe and eventually is able to be brought home, because I'm pretty sure she got arrested for what? Cannabis oil? Yeah.
She got arrested for having too much cannabis oil on her person heading into Russia.
That's a stupid thing to arrest a human being for, and that just proves to some of the unjust laws in some other countries as well.
So it is unfortunate, and she should be home, and you should be detained for what y'all mentioned, right? As for the efforts to get her back, and again, I really do believe she should be home. I don't want to pin this on the American government, not just because I'm an immigrant in the country, but the reason I don't want to pin this on the American government is because I understand what game that's being played here. And I feel like, it's unfortunate because it is the worst time this could possibly happen. Obviously, she didn't know what she was doing or what she was getting into. And on top of that, she wouldn't have known about the war on Ukraine that was about to happen. Like, as Dwayne said, she's going over there to make a living because the WNBA, quite frankly, doesn't bring in, doesn't generate enough funds for her to just be a WNBA player. So many superstars have to play overseas, whether it be Russia, Turkey, Israel, et cetera, all of them have to make their money in Europe. The unfortunate situation that I think Joe Biden's government find themselves in is that this happened right prior to, the Ukraine war and the situation that US/NATO has found themselves with Russia. And I think that's why you remember early on the situation, a lot of people were trying not to make the Brittney Griner situation, put it in the public domain. The reason being, and I'm going to defend Joe Biden here, not because he's allowed me in his nice country to make a living, but because I honestly believe that Vladimir Putin and Russia have decided that, yeah, we are going to use this as a way to, we're going to use our leverage here now and drive up the stakes. It's like people trying to trade for Kevin Durant right now. Like, well, we know you want him. So, yeah, we're going to keep driving up the stakes. And reality with US/ and NATO, the war in Ukraine is a funny situation, huh? And, I won't get into my beliefs on what happened in the situation. That's another conversation. It is like Russia just knows they have the US by the balls right now. Like, they're like, all right, well, you put all these sanctions on us. No, we have what you want, or we have something that you want. And now let's play this hard game. I honestly feel like, it could be wrong, Dwayne. I honestly feel that the government is trying their best or trying their utmost.
It's possible. I'm not gonna sit here and I say I don't know what they're doing because I don't. You know, I mean, I'm not. I just think But what I am saying is we've seen and heard about instances like where there have been actual like aggressive attempts being made, right? And maybe it's because none of that stuff has, and just because that stuff hasn't been reported doesn't mean it's not happening, of course. But what I'm saying is like when you hear about journalists being kidnapped in the Middle East or something like that, and you hear you think and you look back and you read about SEAL teams being sent into all different types of camps to go bring back a journalist. I feel like that same energy should be kept for someone of the status of Brittney Griner. Is what that is my belief, and that is what I'm standing for.
And I'm with you, Rob. The only thing is like Russia's a different place. Like that's like trying to invade China or trying to invade North Korea. These are different places, and I honestly feel what's going on is that Russia just knows it's a bargain chip and know that we have put this in the public spotlight. Putin is smiling even further to back because he's like, oh, well, yep, no, I got you by the balls because the public pressure is on your government now to get Brittney Griner out of here. So all these sanctions you've put on me because of the Ukraine war, no, what are you going to do, Uncle Joe? Are you willing now to ease some of these sanctions? Are you willing to move your NATO presence out of Ukraine? Because I promise not to get into politics, but yeah, are you willing though to lessen these sanctions on me to get your gal back? Seemingly the answer is no. So like it's like Russia has all of the bargaining chips right now. They have everything. You want Brittney Griner, we don't have to give her to you. What are you willing to give up now? Like, that's basically what it is. Like, what are you willing? How far are you willing to go now? Because I have you by the balls. And the more public sentiment, the more the three of us talk, the more everyone goes out in support of Brittney Griner, the more public pressure the government puts, the more that you have to get Brittney Griner on. Words are hard. The more that you have to get Brittney Griner home, is the more that leverage that Russia has. It's just going up by the day. Like Russia just has all this leverage now, and they're going to look at the U.S. and say, how much is she worth to you? What are you willing to do? Are you willing to lessen these sanctions? What are you willing to give us to get her? Because the public is on your ass. You need her more than we need to release you. What are you going to do? So I want to say, I really hope she gets home. It could not happen at worse time. I can tell you this, no. Had Brittney Griner done this 5 years ago, this would not even make the news. She'd be back home in the U.S. like normal. But there's that war going on. There's tensions between both sides, the Allied forces and Russia says, well, what are you going to do? You're going to come in here and get her? Come, let me see you. And it's just unfortunate that a well-known human being like Brittney Griner is caught in the middle of all this. Because this is what war does, and this is why I hate what goes on in the world, because she's just there, like Dwayne said, trying to go and make a living. And, well, did something that you didn't know was illegal in this particular country, and now you're caught between two warring forces. Guys, sorry to end on that some note, but yeah, I decided to list or not Neil. Neil probably would have cut it if he had a choice. Dwayne, you know how it goes, how to finish out shows. Tell the kind folks what you got coming and how to find you.
Yeah, well, apparently there's been some stall in the voting process to get me to take over the show. So as it stands right now, Justin's still the host, but you can find me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at GTP Marcus. Go talk with Marcus on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. I'm everywhere. It's obnoxious. It's also quite tiring. Had JT and the Don on the show today to talk about the Falcons, to talk about the Dolphins. Have a show coming out on Wednesday to talk about the Colts, and I've got a show coming out on Friday to talk about the Chargers. Jeez, words are hard. So just make sure you follow on all the platforms so you don't miss anything.
Well, seriously, follow GTP Marcus at GTP Marcus. Let's go talk with Marcus because he is right now the hardest working man in the industry, bringing out episodes almost every single day. And this is no disrespect to you, Payton, because we do love your show. So please tell the people what you got coming. I know to find you.
Yeah, so I host a live show weekly You could find me on YouTube at PD Sports. You could also find me on Instagram and TikTok at PD Sports. I post the majority of my content on TikTok. Currently on my YouTube channel, though, I'm breaking down every single NFL team and their outlook for this season, much like Marcus is doing, but I don't have. What did you say?
Where do you put Aaron Rodgers in your quarterback list? I know you had a quarterback list. Where do you put Aaron Rodgers?
I don't remember. I think I had him at like third. I think I had him behind Josh Allen and Mahomes. Yeah, I know. Well, scary, right? But like,
He's second on my list.
I don't know. Postseason is important, but we could have that debate off camera. But yeah, you can find me at PD Sports on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and at Payton Doyle Show on Facebook and Twitter.
And if you're here, then please do subscribe to the show. Please, please, please. I find that a lot of people watching the show are not subscribing. Maybe they don't want to come back to content. But every Monday night, we are here live, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. Please put that hashtag in before this just in, or you'll be taking the Max Kellerman ESPN show. So that is hashtag this just in every 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on Monday nights here live on YouTube. So for Dwayne, Marcus, and Payton Doyle, I am Justin of This Justin. Hashtag This Justin, that is. We'll see you back here Monday night. Good night.
I don't have a mark on my face, and my upset son in Lisbon, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. If God's with the king of that, he'll get us the day. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
I said, can I be a legend? Search your soul and answer me this question. Do you think I have what it takes to be great, but still be humble and learn from my mistakes? Shit.